look at. So we do have a quorum, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks for coming to the October 29th board meeting. Ken. So Beverly?
Good morning, everyone. Chairman French.
Present.
Mr. Emerson.
Here.
Mr. Ellis.
Here.
Dr. O'Halloran.
Here.
Mr. Durant.
Here.
Ms. Odell. Mr. Jones. Mr. LaCassis. And Mr. Cody. Okay.
Cody, you get the gold star for right on time.
Or 1 minute.
Perfect time. Depending who's phone
Go to what
smartphone
you
look at. Go to what smartphone you look at.
Good morning, Jay.
Yogurt. Boy, you're too young.
Yeah,
This your new
Not gonna be able to vote.
resolution? More yogurt?
Yeah, live and active cultures.
I think I didn't know where to prove that, maybe.
Okay, we're
November 28th.
Okay.
Hey, how you doing?
That's the last one I was at, so I guess I'm locked on
we're fighting our system a little bit here. We're not going to be able to vote on any action items until we get people signed in. So the continuous late arriving is working against us here. So I'm going to go ahead and ask for first and a second to discuss the minutes. And first and a second open discussion?
Second.
So first and a second, do we have any discussion on minutes?
I have one correction. Toward the end, there's a comment right toward the bottom of the minutes. There's something that says Mrs. Durrance.
Yes.
Says something, and that's actually Terry.
Okay, all right, speaking. Okay, all right, we will correct that. Thank you.
There's nothing that's happened that anybody didn't know about it.
All right. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion on the minutes? Beverly, can we vote or not? If not, we'll vote by hand for this one. Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Okay, let's move on to the action items, and hopefully we'll catch up with the sign-ins by then. So the first action item, Mike, if you want to take us through this, is the adoption of the budget calendar.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Request board approval for fiscal year 2019-2020, budget adoption and millage levy calendar to reaffirm the dates for the budget workshop. The budget adoption and millage levy calendar are approved by the board each fiscal year to facilitate timely adoption of the budget and approval of the recommended millage levy.
Okay, we need a first and a second to open discussion.
Move that we open this discussion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. We have a first and a second. Any discussion on the millage calendar? This is the same dates that's been published. Shouldn't be a surprise to anybody.
Quick question just for clarification, but the budget workshop, that's something that we can kind of be involved in, be a part of? Is that what a workshop means?
Yes, historically Terry will bring a budget to us in the first workshop. We discuss it. We make recommendations, we want to make changes, things we're not comfortable with, and then we come back for the second workshop and we begin to firm it up. So this is a participating workshop.
So those workshops are April 23rd and May 28th.
Is that the date, Mike, I'm not looking at?
March 13th and April 2nd.
Right, where are those dates? Got it. Okay.
Do we have any other comments on the budget calendar? If not, I'd like a vote.
I'm not clear about the date.
Go to the bottom of it. Last part of it. Start eternity.
Okay, thanks. Got it.
Why is it listed like
Why is it listed?
that? You have fact finding, facts and finding, and you have April 23rd, May 20, then you go down to alternative, and then you come up with the May 12th and the April 2nd.
I have a hard copy. I can't see anything on my computer.
April 23rd and May 28th are board meetings that would be public hearings. The others are board workshops.
The extensive calendar shows the internal dates, and in the body of the report are the major target dates for the public meetings.
But my graph is
Thank you.
the March and April, the March 12th and April, those not alternative, those are workshops, right?
But that's us.
All right, so why label them as how you have them labeled? Why aren't they just workshops?
Well, March 12th is later. If you can't.
Somebody reading this would say, you plan on having the meetings on the 23rd and 28th, and then you would go to the alternate. You would go to the March and April. See? You understand what I'm saying? It shouldn't be labeled like that. It gives the wrong impression for someone who's just reading the board minutes.
So the question is, why is it
Right.
designated as alternate?
Board workshop
Board workshop. March
rather than
12th.
alternate. Get alternate out of there. Put board workshop so everybody will know we're on board workshop. Rather than it's not an alternate meeting. It's the workshop.
A couple more questions on the workshops. Do we know what time these would be?
They're usually set per board member availability.
Okay, cool, very cool.
Usually they're 10 to 12-ish.
10 to 12? All right, I just want to make sure I can set the time aside. And these workshops are not public, or they are public?
They are public.
They are public.
They are public events because the full board is present.
Okay, very cool.
Oh, that would be something we could choose if we wanted to.
Correct. That's the question Chester's asking, that's what I'm saying.
Chester, I'm not saying what you're asking, so I'm looking at.
Well, excuse me if I may, the alternatives are either March 12th and April 2nd, or the other alternative is some other date that you might choose for the workshop.
I think the board workshop is March 12th and April 2nd.
1 and 2.
In the middle is the executive director's recommended budget is finalized. That's an internal deadline for Terry, I believe.
Yes, in the body of the report where we list the alternatives, we're saying the board can either adopt the calendar as we've presented it, or you can suggest an alternative calendar. So that's what the alternatives section is for. Vote on the calendar as presented, or give us input on an adjusted calendar.
So the other dates can't be moved around.
Well, the dates that we're.
The 23rd and the 28th are solid.
Those are board
Those
meetings.
are those are board meetings. So that's definitely gonna be.
Right.
Okay, now I'm understanding your thinking, but I'm just the average person reading it.
Yeah.
The board workshops is March 12th and April 2nd.
We good. I'm on the same page.
The word alternatives is just part of the
Part of
standard
your
format.
there you go.
Okay, any other, we have we're back. All right. Any other questions about the board workshop or the dates?
Cody, move that. It's got Cody that says to move.
No, it should be Bill
It's got me as second.
for that.
I think Clinton moved.
Clinton moved,
and
Bill second. On mine, it's got Derek moved.
Top it says Derek,
Yeah,
Cody
then,
moved.
then it's got me down there second, and I didn't second anything.
Can we make
Don't
sure
worry
that
about
correction
it.
be made?
That's just logistical.
Nah,
It's a usual word.
Okay, I think we're ready to move for a vote. Can we have
I move to vote on adopting the.
the action item calendar for the budget?
Correct.
Second.
All those in favor?
You on the board?
Yes.
We raising our hands or?
We on
We're
the
gonna,
board
we're
or
gonna
we
try to
ready?
vote
Try to do it.
On the board.
Yes.
on the board.
It hadn't come up, okay.
There it goes.
Well, this just kind of jumped around again.
Yeah.
Now it's got Pete as the seconder.
All right.
And Cody moving.
They got
It's only
people,
him.
listen, it's got everybody, so just hit the button that says yes.
Chester can vote for all of us.
Just
Chester
hit the
wants
button that
updates
says
today.
yes. Now we got 8-0.
Now we know when we're coming.
Hey, listen, let's keep going.
So to come back to this system, I find this whole thing, who do we talk to about this? I find this thing very frustrating. We need it to keep ourselves in order,
We probably can explore.
but it's
there.
really, it's very awkward, and it just seems to be sometimes more trouble than it's worth.
Well,
We
that-
probably can explore there.
Some not.
System that we-
Yeah.
But couldn't you solve the
True.
problem?
We all raise our hands
The
on
problem
time.
is, as I heard you said the first time, is people signing in different times.
Mhm.
So why don't we set it up so Beverly can sign everybody in, put everybody's laptop on and sign everybody in, and then those folks who are not here, what is it?
Laptop and phone.
And what?
I said laptop and phone. You said.
Oh, okay, sign them all in. Let her sign them all in when she gets here to set up the thing, then it will be ready for us to vote. The problem is coming is because we spared her to come in and sign in, and then she gotta redo it. So just sign everybody in. If they don't show up, they don't vote, they don't vote.
All right.
Just like this one says 8-0, so we know one person is missing because there are 9 of us. That would solve the problem.
I agree that would solve the problem, and the second thing that would solve the problem is if we could all come in on time.
That's a human factor.
We've got to work better at getting here. Okay, it doesn't hurt to get here a couple minutes before a meeting.
Oh, I agree.
If you can.
If we can. But I also, Beverly, don't object to you. I think that's a good idea. If you can sign everybody in without any effort to be ready to go.
I think that's
Nobody
only-
think about Beverly, I tell you.
That's only part of the problem. The other thing that we were just talking about is, the accuracy of who's first and second, and sometimes when we do a first and second, it's to get into a discussion, and then we do another first and second for the vote.
I agree with you on that. That confused me last time.
That's what's creating some confusion, so we need to sort out how we're doing that a little
And
bit.
I don't think you actually need to go into
That's a strong
discussion
point.
with a vote.
Probably not.
The motion's made and then it's open for discussion automatically.
That's right.
That's
All
right.
right, we'll go in that direction. Okay, so next action item, Mike, is the award of the on-call marketing contract.
Yes, the board requests approval to award of an on-call marketing contract. CAT needs the assistance of a highly experienced and professional firm with expertise in marketing, graphic design, photography, website design, printing, special effects, public relations, and/or outreach. Many of these activities require specialized skills, equipment, and time that cannot always be accommodated in-house. CAT is interested in retaining the services of a qualified firm to support in-house marketing staff.
Okay, do we have a first and second to
Motion.
discussion? So Dr. O is first, do we need to have a second?
We discussed it,
Not
right?
clear. Do we
You
need- do we
have
need
a
that
motion and a
discussion?
second to approve the item.
Okay.
And then you automatically go into discussion and stuff.
That's what I thought we
Yeah.
should do. I think that's what Bill
He's
was talking
moved to
about.
approve, and I'll second.
Okay.
For discussion.
So while we.
No, this is for the motion, and then you have the discussion, and then
I got you.
vote.
Then you make your vote, yeah.
That's
Okay,
right.
so whoever is the mover, go ahead and click now. It should give you the option. to go
Who's
ahead
moving?
We don't wanna.
Dr. O.
We're in discussion, we'll vote after the discussion.
Okay, so we don't need a mover or
Correct.
second if we're going to discussion.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Do we have any discussion?
Yeah. I thought we already hired somebody for this.
No, I think we were doing the RFP before. This is approving the RFP.
We hired staff. Y'all got upset when I called you on the hand of that before, because after you hire your staff, you put out an RFP, you hire somebody, that was supposed to be their job, this public relations and all this da-da-da that I'm looking in front of me. And then when you got here, you change their responsibility. Now you want us to go back and redo and hire a firm that we already hired staff to do.
This has to do with.
I'm nutty, but I ain't crazy.
This has to do with things like printing, photography, things like that.
I read real well. I read real well. I'm looking at exactly what I know I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that we hired staff to cover these areas that we got here. We talk about public relations. We're talking about getting out, because Bill was one of his main peeves was that we were not telling our story. And you remember, am I correct? Then you all right. And we hired somebody to do that. Now this is doing the same thing.
No, this is a much more extensive.
Public relations, special events,
I mean, what we're
social
talking about,
media.
I think what this is talking about is producing this work, which is beyond the scope of staff. This is the level of work that we need more staff to do if we were trying to do it in-house.
So what work is beyond staff?
And this is an on-call.
Give me some examples.
Well, the photography for one thing.
Website
You know, if you
design.
want to talk about, you know, at least my area of expertise.
We got people here who can do website design. We don't?
What this is for is on-call service, when we need extra help with something, when we need somebody to do something that we can't do. This isn't a contract where we're hiring them to do all this stuff. If I'm understanding this right, this is simply for an on-call service to be available, and we will pay them as needed for work that we need to job out.
And it's meant just to support staff we already have.
I think it is basically some overflow position. If something comes up that we can't handle, this is not a fixed contract. This is if something comes up and we need help
when you
with
need it.
something.
I understand that when we need it.
So my question, since we can't go into this, is if it's something we needed, are we gonna set up a budget or a limitation as far as how much money can be spent? If we gonna propose this right here, and I see the list of people who said that they want to do this service. What kind of budget limitations are we gonna set for this? Because that's not written in here, and once I approve it or disapprove it, then I'm sure Terry's got an answer, so I'm waiting.
So these types of expenditures are approved when you adopt the annual budget, but if a task is estimated to go over the approval limit of staff, it will come back to the board for approval. So any engagement over $20,000 will come as a separate action item in a future board meeting.
So basically what that being stated, we can have expenditures under $20,000 to equate to a totality of $200,000 and really not ever have the board have any opinion on it.
Well,
I'm just putting it in.
right, your restriction is put on staff when you adopt the budget for outreach and for marketing. So there are individual sub-accounts that cover these categories, and staff works within those budget restrictions.
So does that tap into the budget they already have?
Right, the
So
budget
what
they
is
already
it-
have.
So what is the budget, I guess it's coming out of,
The marketing general, marketing outreach, or marketing printing.
and so what is that budget? What is that budget right now? Do you know that number on that budget? Because
Awesome.
what I don't want us is go over that number, because we're adding something and we're not putting a cap on how much they can go out there and get marketing and everything like that. Only cap out here is they can't spend more than $20,000 without coming to us as a board.
Right, that's the approval policy as it stands today.
Correct.
I don't have the annual budget in front of me, but I think all three of those accounts have a budget between $40,000 and $60,000 for the year.
All right, before I can vote on this, I have to have some kind of cap there, because I'm not just gonna give a free-for-all and then they just play under the $20,000 limit and then we working. So I can't personally vote for this.
But there is a cap, and the cap is the budgeted number.
Yeah, but the thing is, if they're spending, that means they gotta keep looking at that budgeted number. But if they have a budget at $100,000, $200,000, whatever that number is, then they're held liable to that budget. I can't do that right now because they could dip into that budget and then it affects employees in that whole budget area.
I think, Terry, this is a separate, I mean, I still assume this is a separate budget for on-call services.
So the budget is adopted annually. Each of these categories has different annual budget restrictions. And when our staff needs additional help, it will be recorded in those accounts. So the cap for this contract would be the budget amounts for those categories.
So,
But I think the question that's being asked is, what is the budget number for these categories? I
Each
think-
one of those sub-accounts has a budget of approximately $50,000 a year. So we would not spend more than $150 all year long on this type of activity.
But we
There's
won't-
three
we won't-
budget accounts. This is one of the three budget accounts.
There are 3 budget accounts
Which
where this
are?
type of work would be coded. Marketing general, marketing outreach, and marketing printing.
and so let's say you were talking about marketing printing,
Mhm.
and let's just say that it's a $50,000 budget. You could not hire these offline or these on-call services to exceed that. I mean, even if you were only hiring them for 5,000 here and 5,000 there, you can't exceed that $50,000 budget, because that's the only money we've given you to spend all year.
That's correct.
Yeah, but that money also is tied to internal services too, correct? So
It
no
is.
internal services are tied in that?
It is, but we monitor the budget every month. Terry gives us a printout, her office gives us a printout of the accounts. And so we're able to see every month where we are, what we spent last year. In this current budget, you all approved, the current budget last fiscal year when you had budget talks, okay? So, you know, once these on-call, this on-call services, contract is approved, if we need that service, it's considered like an overflow for work that we maybe can't perform as quickly as we need it to be. So once we use those on-call marketing contract, we would basically use one of those line items within our budget. We monitor it. You've already approved the budget for marketing outreach. This is pretty routine for most transit systems, most businesses. They have an overflow contract like this to help us with special events, to help us with survey, market research, things that a limited staff with limited resources can't get to everything. We can't be everything to everybody, but this is an office where we can reach out to and say, hey, we're doing a special event for new buses and we need a little support. Can you help us with that? Hey, we need to do additional survey work. We have staff available, but we need extra people to help us. That's what this contract is for. Pretty routine.
But your total budget in that one category, again, let's say $50,000, that has to cover every dime you spend, whether it's internally or externally.
Absolutely.
That's all the money you get, no matter how you
Absolutely.
spend it.
Absolutely.
And
And if
we
it's a
can-
big expenditure, like Terry said, then I'll have to come back and say, hey, you know, we need to do A, B, and C, and it's above that line.
But that still doesn't allow you to exceed your budget.
No.
That's just because it's $20,000, you have to have board approval.
Right, right.
Y'all finish, I can finish my comments on that though. I understand all that, and it's probably routine in most transit systems, but this transit system is not always routine. And I don't always see the numbers. And so I wanna make it clear that because I don't see all the numbers, and number one, number two, we're saying that we don't have any staff in this facility that can do any of these things before we go into this.
No, that's not what we said. You know, we had the same conversation several months ago when we brought the request to you all, asking you to allow us to go out on RFP.
Yeah, I remember.
We have a very talented staff, but, you know.
I don't think we tap into our staff as much as we should.
Well,
to be honest
that's
with you.
your opinion, and I appreciate your opinion.
Whoa,
And
Howard.
I can
Howard.
add that.
I'm gonna get up and go to the restroom, and I'm gonna come back, so I don't have any anger in my heart, because ain't nobody gonna talk to me like that.
Well, Jay,
My opinion or not, because I am a board member who makes the decisions about this budget,
And you're getting
and my
other
opinion
needs.
counts more than any employee of this organization. So
I'm gonna-
understand that. No
I'm
one's
gonna
gonna talk to
su-
me any kind of way, sir.
I'm going to talk to you very politely.
No one.
And one of the comments you made about not seeing the numbers, I found a little surprising, because you are the chairman of the finance committee. You can ask for anything you want.
Yeah, but Howard, in due respect, I'm the chairman of the finance committee, but I'm not the chairman of the finance committee, because I have never been asked to be the chairman of the finance committee. You direct that meeting. and I sit there and
And
I
you
wait
sit there,
until you
and
allow me.
what did you do at the last finance
I
meeting?
did absolutely nothing like I always do all
You worked
meetings
it-
because you already have the agenda already set and everything like that prepared.
Because nobody has, when we were appointed chairman of the finance committee and all the committees, I suggested that the chairman begin to put together the agendas.
And I sent you,
Nobody's done it.
and I sent you an email stating my request and request for finance committee, and I can resend the email to you. And it was ignored, and we moved forward doing the finance committee the way we always do. And so as long as business is being taken care of, I'm not gonna argue. But since this is being stated, the next finance committee, like I requested, I will get with Ms. Terry, and I'll make sure I proceed the finance committee moving forward.
Works for me.
Thank you, sir.
But remember, we are not responsible for day-to-day operations of CAT. We're responsible for oversight and to look at what we're doing.
What did I
And
ask for day-to-day? What did I ask for day-to-day? I don't ask for day-to-day.
I think on what we're talking about here, we're making a pretty big thing out of something which is basically an overflow. If we need additional help, let's get some additional help to print some flyers to do something else. I mean, I think this is getting to be a very detailed discussion, something we've always had. We've always had on-call marketing.
Yeah, this is the second rebid of this type of service. And what this allows us to do is get help without having to go through a full-blown RFP for every opportunity. So we're basically putting somebody in place with an FTA compliant procurement, so we don't have to do it every time we need a service for a special event or a special initiative.
I'm stating it for the record again. I want to make sure that we're using the talent here at Chatham Area Transit to the fullest. And if we're not doing that and we're going outsourcing for them, I'm not saying it's not for us to go outsource, but I think we need to make sure that we develop our own talent here so we don't have to do these kind of RFPs. Because if we do more in-house and control our media and everything that we do as an organization, I think we can move a lot faster. So that's my last statement on that.
And I agree with that statement. Chester?
Is it true down here that this said it's prepared by Terry? This came from Terry, this came from me?
So procurement falls under the
that's
finance
fine.
division, and I'm required as the chief of that department to oversee the procurement,
Where it come from?
the procurement process.
So
the report comes from me because it falls under my division.
right, where did the request come from?
The request came from marketing to my manager. We asked the board for permission to release the RFP. We've gone through that process, and now the board report asking for approval comes from my procurement manager through me to you.
And you then send it to Curtis for his approval?
In the Minitrack system, yes, sir. I upload the report, Curtis reviews the report for approval for presentation to the board.
Can I ask a strange question? In the midst of this, may I ask a strange question?
Sure.
Where's Curtis?
Curtis is off ill. He's got a stomach virus that
But he can be in Atlanta to the Chatham Day?
That's where he got the stomach virus, I suppose.
Same here.
Go ahead.
What you hear, Clint?
Sure. I would just like to say I think this is great. I think marketing is absolutely something I'd like to see CAT do more of. I think having more flexibility within that department to be able to procure services to do the best job possible is great. I absolutely see marketing as a subsector of accessibility, one thing that I always try to make a statement of is that good design makes it easier for people to use and operate our system. So whatever we can do to make it easier for more people to understand how it works, I'm very pro for. I know we've got this Let's Go campaign that may also be stressing, above and beyond the usual means of what our marketing group does. And I think I will very likely, I can't say always, but you will have much support for me for supporting marketing expenses. I think it's a crucial part of running a very effective transit system. So I'm excited to be able to vote yes on this.
And my second point is, I see we have two local vendors that actually, what was the discrepancy that kept them from getting into the bid? I see it's 30 points between the Savannah one and the Quest, Clark Creative versus Quest Corporation. What were the real discrepancies between those two? Because I'm also a firm believer that we need to be as local as possible. Land O'Lakes is not that far, but it's not that close either. So I would like to have some more insight on, you know, why we may have, and I understand the point system is why we didn't do it, but what effective points were there that they didn't make the bid?
I think I asked that question before, and didn't you say that under FTA rules, we can't give local priority?
We're not allowed to give any preference points for local businesses. And basically, the federal government and federal funds support our operations, so they require us to go national for our vendor pool.
Okay.
The summary evaluation scores by evaluator are included in the report, so you can see which
It's in this
areas.
report on here?
Yes.
I got
There's.
you. I see it.
Yeah, so you can see where one vendor did better than the other, but we can't just hire a vendor because they're local.
I got you. Well, I just want to make sure I stress the fact that I would like to see if we can even, if this is an RFP per year, if we can talk, well, I'll talk to them without my cat hat on and say, hey, these are the things we need you to work on as far as procurement is concerned. Because I without my cat hat on. Because we have to start building our own bases in our home.
The back-end process on a procurement is.
I want to come back to that statement to Ty.
Come back to it. If I'm
Yeah,
wrong,
I
I'm
want to
wrong.
come back on this one, because there's some,
FTA regulations and our policies, code of conduct, prohibit
That code of conduct.
board members involving themselves.
What you got? You gonna have now, since you brought up the code of conduct being that, you gonna have to tell me what line item it says in the code of conduct.
I don't have
So
it in front of me.
You can't quote the code of conduct if you don't know give a line item. Please give me the line item on that, please.
I'll
Because
have
we're
to-
not gonna just yell out code of conduct, without giving me any code of conduct.
All right.
That's what all.
Yes,
all
you can call the question.
I call the question.
okay, I think on the marketing,
He wanted to finish the statement. He wanted to say a statement.
no, I wasn't going to make a statement, but I'm nervous when we start having board members talk to vendors, because that can get us into a lot of trouble with the FTA. And we've had that in the past with board members connecting to different vendors. It just opens up a whole line of questions I don't think we as a CAT or we as board members want to.
So does FTA state that we can't let those vendors know why they didn't get the procurement?
So the back end of the procurement process is that the procurement staff will contact all of the vendors who were not awarded a contract and offer them the opportunity for a debrief. So then those vendors can come in, talk to procurement staff, go over their evaluation, and get some insight into what could make them the preferred vendor next time.
Appreciate it, Terry. That answers my question.
Okay.
I would not, on record, contact any of these vendors,
You got none.
because Chester will get me.
You got that right.
Michael, last question, then we're going to
No,
call
this
for
is the
vote on
question.
this.
I tested the speaker button. I don't think with this up, we can do the speaking part.
Speaking key.
Yeah, we already knew that. I've been
You
drinking
said-
it all day.
Yeah, but we got the voting up because what we did is
Oh,
not on
gotcha.
the agenda. We should be able to go to speaker. Somehow, I don't know how you do it, but
Okay, final questions on this?
Well, point of order.
Jesters?
When somebody calls a question, that has to end debate, doesn't it?
It does.
You cannot continue discussion.
I like that word.
Okay, then let's
Get the answers.
vote. We have a first and second. The debate has been ended.
You wanna vote
Is
in
it allowing
part?
us to vote or we doing hands?
We're going to vote
It's ready.
on this.
So the mover can go ahead and click now, and then we'll wait for the second.
Well, I'm not the mover.
Mike move.
Oh, okay.
I move.
Okay, now the seconder,
No, it says, okay.
now you can vote.
Now I can vote. It's straight. I just have to wait on the machine.
Yeah, when we put that screen up, we lose the speaker. For some reason.
That's yours, Bob.
And if you
You
want
have to move. You have to move a little better than
Yeah,
that.
yeah, all of it.
Off the water.
Yeah, man. Float yourself.
It's like a razor.
Okay, the ayes have 5, 2 noes, and 1 abstain, so motion carries. Next action item, Mike, is another award for naval engineering and design contract.
Yes, request board approval for the award of the contract of naval engineering and design services necessary to rehabilitate 2 ferry vessels. CAT has been awarded FTA grant funding to complete major rehabilitation work on our ferry vessels. Naval engineering and design assistance is needed to properly develop the invitation for bids, IFB, scope of work for the rehabilitation of the Susie King Taylor and Juliet Gordon Lowe. Scheduled rehabilitation work will include vessel interior, exterior, engines, and drives. Additional services provided will include assistance with the rehabilitation, IFB process to include input needed to answer potential bidder questions related to the ferry engine components and require rehabilitation work.
Okay, first and a second to open discussion.
I think we should, the way this system's working, I think we should do our discussion before we get into the first and second, because that keeps us from being able to have to speak to the board.
Right.
Okay, 2 speakers waiting, so we're in discussion. Bill.
I just have a clarification question. This is not a request for somebody to work on the boats. This is a request for somebody to help us write the RFP so that we ask the right questions. Is that right?
This is naval architects to design the work to be done.
Yeah, so basically we had the 2 original ferries from 03 and 04.
Right.
They're due for new engines, new drives, new generators, and when we change all that, we have stability calculations that have to be done to make sure we can keep our passenger counts where they are. So there's a lot of work that goes into it. So we're hiring a naval architect to help us with that. There's paperwork that's got to go to the Coast Guard, things of that nature that have to get approved for these change orders. So we're getting a naval architect to help us go through this and develop the scope of work to put out to bid for the shipyards to bid.
Okay, and I guess that's why I'm asking for clarification. If and when we approve this, at some point down the road, you're gonna come back and ask for an RFP to actually do the work.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have to put it out for bid again for a shipyard to bid on the actual work.
All right, thank you.
Chester.
2 questions. Do you have a timeline?
The timelines were for this naval architect work was in the bids, and I believe DeJohn Bay had a 7 to 8 week timeline for them to come meet with us, go through get all the information put together, and then give us a scope of work to put out for bid for a shipyard.
So after those 7 weeks, you'll bring back the request for RFP?
For a shipyard to bid on the work that the naval architect designed. That's correct.
And that takes how long?
Was it 45 days, Terry, for the bid?
So a procurement follows a 6 to 8 week schedule at a minimum.
Okay, so you got 7 weeks there, 6 to 8 your weeks? That's what you're telling me?
Yes, it takes 6 to 8 weeks for us to complete an FTA compliant procurement process.
Okay, so then the work takes?
We're estimating between 4 and 5 months for the shipyard to complete the work per boat. So
this boat actually, it won't actually hit the water again until probably 2020?
So we take them out one at a time.
yeah, one at a time.
I understand that.
And once it goes to the shipyard, it's 4 to 6 months, depending on how the work
On the scope of
progresses.
work, that's correct.
Okay, so now where did these rankings come from I'm looking at?
So the A&E is done per the Brooks Act method, which requires CAT to look at all proposals and pick who's best qualified. So it's different than a scored procurement where you select the highest score, or an IFB where you take the lowest bid. So what you're looking at is the rankings from the evaluations committee review. Then once you get your most qualified A&E provider, you negotiate with them a fair price. So it's a 2-step method, and it's required for A&E type procurements.
Okay. So my next question, I can address the question that again.
I'm sorry?
If you need clarification.
Okay. based upon what you said earlier, and I'm talking about everything we've been talking about now. Staff runs day-to-day operation, we oversight, right?
Right.
Okay. So how is it you gonna have oversight over things that you see once you get here and not before then? That's my question.
I'm not understanding your question.
If I'm to have oversight,
Right.
to make sure it goes right, right? We've got rankings here, and if you go back up the other side, we had folks already graded and put in place. And that's the first time I'm seeing this when Beverly sent it to us the other day. She sent us the agenda and so forth, and I read that. That's the first time I've seen it. But among the rest of us who sit on this board, there has been no conversation with me or anybody else about any of the things that I saw this past week and I'm seeing now. So how can we have oversight to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do rather than just locking us in?
I would think that would be at the committee meetings and at these meetings.
Well, at committee meeting, at our committee
We
meeting,
didn't mention none of this in committee.
Yeah, see, that's my point. That's what I'm driving. All right, is that if we're supposed to have oversight, and none of this stuff comes up in committee meetings, and you give us all that fluff and boom you've been giving us, and when we come in here, we just as dumbfounded as anybody who walk off the street. Because I'm seeing it for the first time, and you want me to absorb it, vote for it, and approve it. Now listen, I want everybody to know, I have no problems with us refurbishing the boats and getting them back in the water so they can do their job, because the traffic is only going to get heavier. It's not going to get lighter, and we got to understand that. So the best we can do is get this stuff done, and I have no problems with getting it done. But I do have problems with instant approval of stuff. It just shows up at a board meeting, we haven't discussed it in committee meeting, or you limit what you discuss in committee meetings based upon the committee's designation. The most you talk about in committee meetings that I've been have not been the things that I'm seeing now. And I've got a problem with that.
Okay, I'm going to push back a little bit.
Push all you want.
Because we have in the past, when we've had fairly serious action items, we have discussed them in committee meetings before we brought them to the board. That has tried to be the plan that we've done. And I'm trying to think of a few examples that we've sat down before the actual board meeting and we have gone through it to try to root out all the questions. Sometimes, I think in a case like this, our last board meeting was early December. And now this is late January, so a lot of time has gone in the middle. So every once in a while, one of these things is going to come through, which we don't have a lot of notice on, true. But an engineering contract is an engineering contract that we're going to have to do to determine what we're going to do with the boats. But Chester, we have at committee meetings discussed this. And I will also remind everybody that committee meetings are not always attended by all board members. So there is times when we've had these committees, and this is not always the case, but it has been where we have not had everybody at the committee meetings, and you're going to miss stuff. Not in this case, but it has been there. And I do believe, Bill and Mike, that we did discuss this briefly at the executive committee meeting that this was coming. And Jay, you were there too?
It was on all three agendas. We talked about the action item coming to the board. You would not have seen the evaluation scores because the submission deadline was after the committee deadline. But the scores and the detailed scoring behind both of these procurement recommendations are included in the board reports.
So we need to correct that they don't come in after the committee meetings.
It'll just delay the process another 4 weeks, so we'll be at 12 weeks if we have to complete the recommendation and then take the recommendation to the next committee meeting for discussion. We can surely add that month to our timeline.
I'm like my old professor. If you get here on time, you're late.
He's saying it's not church time.
So that means that we need to get it out early so we can get it in early so that we can get it to committee, right? and we don't have these surprises. Because I may have missed one board meeting, I may have left 2 board meetings, because I keep up with myself. But I have not missed any committee meetings, and we did not discuss what we're talking about now in committee meetings. Unless I went totally deaf sitting in the committee meetings. We did not discuss this, and that's, I'm gonna say again, that's a problem for me, because I know what we need to do to transport, and I know how important it is for us to get folks from point A to point B, no matter which one of the categories of transportation we are talking about. And so I just hope, and going forward, as we move toward the future, I hope these things come up in a timely manner, that they can come to the committee, we can discuss them. And now, there's got to be something wrong. Bill don't remember it, and I don't remember it.
I remember we did talk about, when Terry said that we talked about the various contracts coming. I do
Right, we
remember,
had a
because
list
we
of
had
5
the
action
on-call.
That was in your executive meeting.
That was in the executive meeting.
That was in your executive meeting.
We did it in all 3 committee meetings. So the committee meeting agendas were set to include all action items known that were coming to the board. So the budget calendar, the on-call marketing, the next request,
It
and
was. I remember.
this evaluation were on all 3 committee member meeting agendas.
I don't
This
remember
month,
any
Terry's
details.
right, all 3 committee meetings were identical to each other. There was no separate service delivery, there was no separate service development, there was no separate finance. It was all the same committee. So this, none of these 3 should have been a surprise that we're here today.
I call for the question.
Okay, questions
We
called.
haven't had a motion yet.
Well, actually, you have.
You did have a
Thank
motion.
You had a motion and a second to approve, and then you had, well, you're right, you're right. You started discussion first, and you have not had a motion.
Well,
You're correct.
we decided that it was easier to
Right.
have our discussion before we had a motion.
Right.
If we cannot have a discussion before a motion, then we need to know that and understand it, and then we can get our system.
I think, Mr. Ellis's proposal is a motion to approve.
Yeah,
Okay.
motion to approve.
We need a second.
This is what we need to.
Second, does that mean we still get to have discussion now?
You can if you like, but I think you've already done that. haven't you?
Yeah.
Well, I got a question
Okay.
about this, and it's, I mean, I don't disagree with Chester about us having the information at the committee meetings and as much depth of information as possible, although at the same time I know that I don't have the expertise nor the knowledge of these companies to be able to really bring a lot to the table in evaluating them, so I have to look at something like this ranking, and most of the time there's a kind of logic between the evaluators that makes sense, even if the numbers are a little different. But in this particular case, it seems a little odd to me that evaluator 1 and 3 gave us exactly the same rankings, especially since we're talking about a level of expertise here. This is not points for minority participation or that sort of thing. And evaluator 2 gave us the same number 2 and 3, but they completely flipped number 1 and 4, and that seems odd to me.
So that was addressed by the procurement manager when he met with the evaluation committee, and the second evaluator was not aware of the particular technical capacity required to work on our Z drives.
Which is the vote I'm gonna be in if I'm looking at this too.
Right, so basically we bring a group of evaluators together from different departments to make sure it's an independent assessment, and the one evaluator was not aware of the unique technical capacity for the Z drives, and so they did not rank that in the best qualified categories.
Okay. Thank you.
I might also mention that the one that came in as the number 1 ranking, DeJong and LeVay, were the naval architects for the original construction shipbuilding of these vessels, so they already had a huge leg up. They knew it inside and out before we got to this point.
When they built the design it so they could update it.
Right. Which probably helped on their pricing too.
Jay, do you still want to speak? Clinton?
So this is matched 80% by federal grant, 20% by the World Trade Center over on Hutchison. For the actual implementation in the shipyard, will those numbers stay the same?
Yeah.
All right.
So for this particular grant and this particular project, which is multiple rehabs on our ferry vessels for our fleet, the Trade Center has committed to the 20% local match.
Very cool.
So can we get the money before they shut down again?
I wish, Commissioner Ellis, that we're only allowed reimbursement. I wish we could, but you have to have incurred the cost and submit the reimbursement and release payment all within a 72-hour period.
So they'll be
no,
re-
we
they'll be
can't draw the
reopened
money
again
before we
by
do the
then.
work, no sir.
Okay, well, I think we have a first and a second, so I'd like to call for a vote.
So now Chester has to click move.
It's a move.
Let me find my person. Okay.
And I'll second.
We great. Yeah, voted.
Too complicated.
It has gotten way too complicated today.
I don't know why they cut this.
Okay, however, the yeses have carried the day, so motion passes. So next case, I almost hate to bring this up, will be to approve an RFP release for on-call staffing.
Yeah, request board approval to issue a request for proposal for temporary staffing agencies. Temporary staffing services are needed throughout the agency from time to time to serve as a manpower resource, ensuring uninterrupted services for various departments and fulfilling vacancies, unplanned leaves of absence, and various project commitments. CAT currently utilizes the services of a temporary staffing agency. However, following the required small purchase procedures, each time temporary staffing is needed, is cumbersome and inefficient. CAT is interested in securing the services of several qualified staffing agencies in order to make the process of filling temporary staffing needs more efficient, while still choosing the best firm to meet CAT's business needs.
Move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion? Okay.
Yeah, we got it on the board.
Where's Miss Sheila at, so I can have some questions about this? Miss Sheila.
Ms. Michael
She
retired.
retired.
When did she retire?
January, early January. Before.
I asked that question because I mean,
Yeah.
I heard through the streets that she retired, but I heard nowhere official that she retired.
It was her wish that she retire without pomp and
And
circumstance.
fanfare, that's the way she wanted it.
Understood, but as an employee who's been with the company so many years, it's not important for us as board members to know. Especially when I hear she retired from board members in here. So I mean, certain board members knew and certain board members didn't.
I heard it the same way you did. Just
Respectfully, I think we
I heard it through
discussed,
the
we
grapevine.
discussed her replacement at some of the committee meetings. I don't know if it was an agenda item.
We didn't
but
discuss it in the financial committee.
Yeah, so, but I can respond to any questions you may have about the temporary staffing request.
All right, so I'm gonna hold my questions. I'm passing.
Okay, so,
Because I mean, if it's not important for me to know, it's not important to me. That's how I see it.
Chester.
Exactly what services are we talking about?
It varies by department. So for system development, in the past, we have hired temporary labor to staff the required surveys. We needed a team to ride the bus and complete the surveys required for, I think it's every, how many years? Every 5 years, we have to do a passenger survey. For finance, we use temporary labor part-time to count our cash. For maintenance, I think there's been temporary cleaning. And
Call
for the
center.
executive, it's been staffing the front desk. And for the call center, when people leave, it creates a problem with us being able to handle the volume of calls. So while we fill the vacancy, we hire temporary labor to work in the call center. So it varies by department, and it also varies depending on our current need and our vacancies.
So if finance has a shortfall, you can hire a temporary labor, you said to handle cash?
So basically, we have 3 people who work our cash room. We have 1 part-time employee and 2 temporary employees who count cash every day for approximately 4 to 5 hours.
So how are they vetted?
We go through account temps, and they are required the extra security where we have to check their credit, check their availability, and their expertise for handling cash for our particular people. But for the call center, answering the phones, administrative work, or cleaning, they would not have that extra vetting or investigation or check required before they work here.
Are we understaffed?
No, we're not understaffed per the budget. We have vacancies based on attrition. When people leave and there's time to fill vacancies. For the cash room, we're staffed exactly how it's designed. The temporary labor works with our part-time employee. When you do the numbers and you try to hire part-time, non-vetted people for that position, you end up spending more money than staffing it the way we have over the past 8 years. So that's where my temporary labor comes.
Help me out here, Ty. So I stay on your agenda as far as legal is concerned. If Ms. Sheila retired, if she retired in December, you said?
Early January.
Early January. So now, are we using temps to cover her?
No.
What are we doing?
Ms. Tondra Scott is the new director of HR, Human Resources.
So how did that happen without coming before the board?
The board doesn't
Yeah, we
get
don't hire
involved
them.
in
We just
hiring
hire
of employees. The
Okay.
executive
We
director-
don't have to put out.
You mean like an RFP or something?
Yeah.
Like? No, not for hiring
So
employees.
we can just do it and hire and go?
That's what the executive director does.
So,
All right, I won't make it an issue, but I got some differences with that when I read the CAT from '84 and the bylaws and guidelines and stuff. There's some difference there when it comes to those things. I think somebody better go back and read.
I'm going to find it for you right now.
No, wait. Oh, you're not going to get the book in.
I got the Bible.
What you say, boy?
And Tondra, what about your example?
And please don't think I'm at you or talking about anybody. I'm just talking about policies and procedure. And everybody in here knows I'm a policy and procedure person. I know you know that, Mike. Because I talk about policies and procedures, don't I?
So we sure on that.
Yeah, well, I think we need to check it. Because it wasn't what I read. Certain areas, you're right. Certain positions in this organization has to come before this board.
That's exactly right.
Oh, I thought I was right.
The CEO.
You get the CEO, and that's it. And in fact, the Enabling Act of CAT states that the executive director is in charge of all employees and operations.
I'm agreeing with you totally. But there's some other parts of that you're not saying.
You'll have to refer me to what those parts are. I have no idea what you're talking
Well, Jay go in the hunt.
Okay, I think we're gonna move on.
Yeah,
This is not
yeah,
what
we
we're
might as
supposed
well.
to-
We might as well.
I'll bring it up in new business. That's all.
We might as well.
I'll bring it back up in new business.
Okay, so do we have, I think we have a first and a second here. Do we
Yeah,
need,
ready for the vote?
need a vote?
Someone has to pick the mover, someone has to be the second.
Somebody said I'm the mover.
Now we waiting on the second. Bill moved it. We need a second.
We need a second.
Nah, that's not the second. So I'll hit it second. Y'all can vote now.
Okay, motion carries. So the RFP to release for on-call staffing passes.
No, it's in there because I read it.
So moving along, Executive Director's report. Mike, you wanna? I guess you can almost combine this with your 2 reports.
yes, the executive director report and service delivery update is in your board packet on your tablets. We'd just like to point out, we continue to do an excellent job with preventable accidents, both in fixed and paratransit. Ferry ridership was down slightly because of hotel reservations and the weather, mostly the fog. Paratransit ridership is pretty flat. And at this time, I'll entertain any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mike?
You had to give it to me already. You always said that. I read it 3 times.
I guess I have one, that in the fixed route KPI, the ridership productivity and efficiency, I know, are things that are stuff we're trying to address with the route redesign. The safety, quality of service, those 2 items are certainly well within what we're after, but we seem to have some declining on-time performance. Why is that? Is there an answer for why that happened?
Well, I think there's a couple of factors. The APCs that we put on the buses, there's a little conflicting information. You want to talk about that a little bit, Grant?
Sure. So historically, Wendy's here. So what you see on the KPI, Wendy, correct me if I'm wrong, because I believe operations inserts that figure into your board reports. But historically, our supervisors have gone out and done checks at different time points to get a sample on-time performance. Now, they can't go out and do a lot of samples, so I think they do a handful every day throughout the month to get that figure. Why that figure is declining, I'm not totally sure, but we actually wanted to talk to you all about this in committee meeting. But since we have installed APCs on all of our buses, we now have the technology to not just get a sample, we can now get true on-time performance for every single time point in our system, on every single trip, on every single day that we run service. So we've started to dive into this on-time performance data that the APCs are providing, and it's actually quite different than what's being reported in the KPIs. I don't think we're at the point where we want to start reporting it to you because we don't have a full year's worth of data. So comparing on-time performance using APC data now, you can't compare that to the human checks that we did a year ago. So I think when we talked about this internally, we'd like to get a full year's worth of APC data so we can compare apples to apples. But I will say that on-time performance, the figure that we're seeing in APCs is much, much different than what's being reported in that report. And that number is actually in the choices report for the Let's Go project. They used APC data, which is the best available data that we have.
So this 84% is still from the sampling?
That's from the sampling, yes. And to give you an idea of what we are seeing on our APCs, it's somewhere in the 60s. And we've talked to our consultants, Jared Walker. We've talked internally about what is wrong with on-time performance, and it's a number of factors. I mean, the schedules have gotten more and more complex for the operators over the years. We're asking them to do all these different things based on requests from the community. Our schedules, as I think you all know, haven't really changed a whole lot. So we're asking the operators to get to all these different time points that is not realistic in a lot of cases. And so that's in my opinion, that's why our on-time performance is going down and why it's getting worse, because we're just adding more stops and just trying to do too much.
It sounds like this may not change until we have the new route system in place.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, and that's one of the things that we're going to try to address in the system redesign is we really need that figure to be up closer into the 90s to be with industry standard.
Well, and that impacts ridership.
Yeah.
I mean, the worse the on-time performance is, the less likely people are to use the system.
Exactly.
Tony? I know last month I requested that we start separating these reports as far as executive director and CEO and COO. I appreciate the fact that Brown has done it, Mr. Brown has done it both months. because of Curtis not being here. My question is, and I agree with you as far as taking a year's time frame to do that, but I do ask that we get a sample of it somewhere down the line, because we pay for a system. You know, the best way to keep us engaged is not hold us hostage for a year and then say, here's a sample. So if you could give us a sample, you know, it doesn't have to be a big sample, a little sample will do, so we can ask, so we can know what questions we need to start preparing for and asking for. So as the model develops, we don't want to wait a year and ask those questions. We want to ask those questions throughout the term. That's all I have for that.
Chesterton, you're next.
2 questions. This on-time performance is only related to fixed routes?
There is paratransit as well. I think it's another KPI.
Might be a different line item.
It's somewhere else in there?
In the paratransit.
Okay. Where on here is that?
So if you look at
Because I'm flipping and I don't
if
see
you
it.
look at the service delivery report, it breaks it down by mode. I'm not, he's in the
If you look at the
executive
board
report,
report,
which gives a high-level summary. I'm not sure where it is there. I just saw paratransit heavily on that chart.
Okay.
It's down a ways because that's what the report showed us there.
I'm looking at it, but I don't see on-time performance as a category.
It's beyond page 9 of the board report.
I don't have page 9. I got it with the.
That's your report. I think he's looking at the executive. This is not, oh, okay.
All right, just tell me, rather than hold up all the time, just tell me when it comes to paratransit.
Year to date, it's listed at 96%.
96% of the time we on time?
Yes.
Is that what the on board?
The APCs are not installed on paratransit vehicles.
They're not?
No,
So
those are just
so where does this 96 come from?
I don't.
Yeah, it comes from Route Match, the software that's
Tablets.
used for
Remember we installed
paratransit.
tablets hooked to the software.
So if the doctor calls me and says, no, let me put it the way it happened. If one of my constituents call me and says that my doctors wants me to reschedule my appointment because I'm more than 15 minutes late. And I'm more than 15 minutes late because I was not picked up on time and I was not brought on time. All right? You still want me to believe that we're in the 90s? Rather than getting into a long thing, let me invite you to do something for me. All right? The flood is in South Coast. Dr. Harvey is on 67th Street. Dr. Williams is on Waters Avenue. On quite a few of them. Look at those logs I asked them to keep, right? Because somebody not fishing with a pole.
Dr. Harvey and Dr. Williams.
Yeah, Dr. Harvey, Dr. Williams, and then South Coast. See, I'm looking at what you're saying that's 90+%, and I'm Commissioner Lockett calls me about his constituents who are not getting to places on time. And I know, and I disagree with what we said in here, that you cannot prioritize medical over shopping. Medical appointments should come first with paratransit as far as I think. Going to dialysis is more important than going to buy me some kicks.
If only it's against what, Title VI?
That's not the law. That's not what the law says.
The law won't allow you.
Prioritize paratransit.
So has anybody appealed to the law to see if it could be?
That's a federal law.
Has anybody applied? I'm just asking the question.
We
I know
did,
it's against
during
it.
the paratransit
Doesn't mean
crisis,
you can't.
during the paratransit crisis, we did reach out to Region 4. We reached out to the ADA Civil Rights Office in Washington, D.C. And even in that crisis situation, they told us that we were not allowed to prioritize the trips, medical over.
How long ago was that, Terry?
last May when Yellow Cab left and we went through that process.
Okay.
I just think we need to do something. And I'm guaranteeing you that our paratransit number on time is not as good as what we see in front of us. I don't know who fixing it up. I don't know who dressing it up. I don't know who put the lipstick on it or whatever you want to call it. But what I'm getting from constituents, and you know, I always have them call y'all, don't I? I just don't let them give it to me. I have them call y'all all the time. See, that's why when they said it wasn't but 4, I knew that was wrong. I knew that was wrong when they said that, because I had more than 4 examples, and I had called you 3 times, I called Beverly twice, and I'd spoken to the operators twice. That's 7 rather than 4. And then they gave me the number. Oh, we only had 4. And I'm saying, no, somebody here not telling the truth. And I'm just telling you, we need to straighten out, because the county is the one. The county commission is the one who decided that paratransit was going to be for the whole county, and they decided that they were contracting with us to do it. And right now, problems I see with operators being where they're supposed to be, and being told, and having to grab this one over here because somebody forgot to go over here, and all that kind of, it bothers me that we're talking about doctor's appointment. I don't care if you're talking about Walmart. Drop you off at Walmart, we pick you up when we can. But when I got to go to my doctor, I need to be on time. Don't you agree? You agree with going to your doctor on time?
He's not saying do you agree with the law. He's saying
yeah, I'm just saying, do you agree with going
I
to the
was
doctor?
in practice for 32 years. If a patient came in late, we tried to accommodate them. These doctors apparently don't.
They don't do that now.
Well, maybe
If
the
you
doctors
15,
need
if
to
you
be
anything
advised
past
of this.
15 minutes, they tell you we'll make you a new appointment.
I've been late and I've been seen, and I
Right.
checked
I'm
with
good.
all 8 of mine, and none
How
of
can
them
we
said there was a
reconcile
problem.
the route
And you
magic
can't change
board
the law.
to Dr. Williams
Unless you run.
Harvey?
Well, if they don't call to the call center and lodge a formal complaint, it doesn't get, I think that's a discrepancy between if they call you, or if you call me, they don't call and actually register a complaint in the call center. The numbers, that's why there's a difference in the numbers. Those are numbers that come into the call center as official complaints about delays and pickups and things like that.
Now, Mike, to piggyback, and I know we got a order thing. I agree with you on that, but Mike, when they call here, we have to make moves. We can't stall. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing or anybody in the staff is doing. But when they call here and then they call back and say, hey, we called and nothing's getting done, then how do I react to that? Because Mike, I'm telling you right now, I may be a butthole here, but when it comes to when they call, I try my hardest to defend everything y'all do. So that becomes a problem when they call and then they get no reply here, and then they call back to me and say, I didn't get no reply or answer. And I think that's something
Or they put me on hold. I'm through. It's your turn.
I've got 2 questions. The first is, I wonder if part of the issue here is what we use as the metric for on time. I mean, is on time, when we measure that being on time, is that saying we pick this person up at the scheduled time we're supposed to pick them up? Or is that saying we got them to the doctor's appointment when they were supposed to be at the doctor's appointment? Or, I mean, is it the origin or the destination? And is that part of the computation or not?
Chris, could you explain the on-time performance parameters?
When you book a trip, we either lock in your drop-off. If you have an appointment at the doctor's, we lock you in at like 10 o'clock to be dropped off, okay? The on-time performance then measures your drop-off. On your way home, it doesn't really matter what time you get home, but you want to get picked up on time.
Right.
So when we lock in the pickup, the on-time performance is around the pickup time.
Okay. So you can be flexible on that depending on which is the most important.
Correct. We can't lock in both ends of a trip, but we allow the customers to decide what end is most important.
So-
And if you have an appointment, we lock in the drop-off going and the pickup coming back.
Okay, so if someone says, I've got a 10 o'clock appointment, do you tell them when the pickup time's gonna be?
We
so
call
that
them the
you
night
can make-
before and tell them what time the pickup time is
so
going
that
to
you
be.
can make so you can schedule that based on what it's gonna take to get there.
Based on how many other people are on the bus, and yeah, yep.
Okay. My second question, and I know I've continued to beat a dead horse here, but looking at the numbers for paratransit riders, we've got a 3.3% decline in ridership in the last year, but a 13.7% increase in personal care attendants, and a 63% increase in companions. And I know that companions are paying full fare, but I still don't understand why we would, I mean, how do we get such an increase in companions if they are truly companions and not somebody just using paratransit for transportation?
You want me to answer that? Okay. Because we don't provide a complete service, we only go door to door. A lot of people need help in getting into the doctor's office, getting into the buildings. So we have to allow everybody to bring one person along. Now, if they're certified for personal care attendant, that person rides free. But if they're not certified for personal care attendant, we still want to allow them to bring somebody along because we don't provide an all-inclusive service. So if they want to bring a companion along to help them out, we don't ever say no to one.
Right.
And we have no control over what.
Right, I'm fine with that, but for us to have a 3% decline in clients and a 63% increase in companions, somebody's bringing more than one companion.
And that they can do that if there's space available. We also have a group that goes from a nursing home, and there's 7 or 8 of those guys that go to Walmart once a month, or not every month, but every once in a while, and that'll bump the companion number up a little bit
At some
as well.
point, shouldn't this stabilize? Because it's like every month we see another big increase in companions.
Yeah, I
Well,
can't
this
explain
has
that.
been going on for some time now. We keep seeing an increase in companions, and at some point, it seems like that should stabilize.
I agree. I can't explain why. I just know that we don't turn companions away.
Part of that could have a ripple effect. And Clinton, I'm sorry to jump in, but that could have a ripple effect because we're picking up more than one client. And if you start to load up with companions and something goes wrong, you can't use that as an emergency pickup spot. That van, you could fill a van up fairly quickly with.
Yeah, our vans don't generally get filled up too much. They're pretty big. It's very rare that we have 10 or 12 people in the bus.
Okay, Clinton.
If y'all could do just I don't know if I can ask for personal favors, but I guess I will. I got a request from somebody who was applying for paratransit ridership, and they wanted to ensure that their application was secure through the whole process of it being received by CAT to being verified and whatever. I'm not familiar with the process of how applications are received and processed, but I told her I would bring it up, or this person that I would bring it up. And so basically that. So if you could just ensure that we are really taking care of the security of all the paratransit applications as they come in, that would be fantastic.
There are federal guidelines along that.
Okay.
What happens is somebody puts an application in, then we have to get the doctor's verification. That's usually where we get slowed down.
Uh-huh.
Once we have the applicant and the doctor's verification, we only have 21 days to give them a determination. So once we have both pieces, that's it, 21 days. Or we let them ride until we make a determination.
Are there fax machines involved?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes.
they had a concern about fax machines and
Yes.
access to.
Some doctor's offices, especially VA, won't let us do anything but faxes.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Can't even spell fax.
My first point is number one, paratransit is funded by Chatham County, and this will be a heavy discussion this year because I've already started talking with Mr. Smith and the chairman in reference to this, because we didn't start having a lot of these issues until Yellow Cab, and I mean, I think that we've done a whole lot better job than we did when Yellow Cab left us, and I think we still have a lot of room to grow. And so I hope we're not taking this to be beating up each other. I hope we're taking this to say, hey, what can we do to make paratransit better? All right. My second point is, when we issued out a calendar, that calendar for Chatham Area Transit included paratransit meetings for the community to be able to voice their opinion. Whether one shows up, no show up, or 40 show up, that meeting is supposed to be scheduled. And that meeting was changed where it was consolidated with the other meeting, the community meeting. And we canceled that community meeting. And so I want to make it clear, I don't think anybody outside this board should be canceling any community meetings, because that was a calendar we voted on as a board. And moving forward, if we're going to cancel any dates, all board members need to be known about it. Do I have any questions with that?
I think that's a fair comment. That we should, I think one thing we have learned is that we cannot change dates for anything.
Yeah.
Because once we change a date, somebody just doesn't see the email, somebody doesn't get updated with it. I think when a calendar is fixed, the calendar is fixed. If people can't come, people can't come.
I appreciate it.
I think that's the only way to go.
I mean, I agree with that. I guess my question for Jay is, do you feel like we need to have, responding to your question,
I got you, brother.
Do we respond to this meeting thing? I mean, should we go back to having separate meetings? Is that your point?
I prefer to have separate meetings. That way the paratransit, because see, my thing is, I made it a point last year I couldn't make all the meetings, but I changed my schedule this year to be to the meetings. And I drove from, I had to take my son all the way to Pooler, drop him off with his mother, to come back downtown, and the meeting was canceled. And I knew nothing about it. And I changed my wife's schedule, and it's not fair to me.
I take your point about canceling meetings, and I agree with you. Once we set a date, we shouldn't change it unless there's some.
Yes, I agree. I think that it should be a separate
meeting.
Because the county is, we're responsible for funding that to a degree. And my thing is, if I want to come to a fixed transit meeting, a paratransit meeting, I should be able to come to it, whether it's one person or 1,000 people.
Yeah, the other thing, Bill, if you've ever been to one of these, the paratransit side dominates the meetings. So I think it's unfair to the fixed route people.
I agree with that.
Puts the two together because the paratransit group will.
Well, and I'm fine with that. Why did we combine them then? I think what you were saying was we had combined them.
We combined them, I guess, to make it less meetings for us to meet upon. I don't know why we combined.
The decision was made is that since we were having the public meeting for the system redesign, I think it was the next night.
It's the next week. I think his question was last year, why did you all decide to do fixed route at paratransit? Because you had a schedule for 2018 for public meetings that we held throughout 2018.
The reason we did that is we had good participation on the para side, but not so much on the fix in the public meetings.
Well, I understand, but I'm responsible for para more than I am for fix. And so if we have para meetings, I want to be able to attend, or if I can attend, have somebody there. So the answer, what Bill is saying is, yes, I would like to separate the two meetings. And I know we got to vote and do all that stuff and come up with a new meeting schedule, but I want to be able to make sure that paratransit meetings do not get canceled anymore.
Well, I don't think that would be a vote so much as just a direction to staff, wouldn't it?
Yeah. All right.
And it shouldn't be canceled.
Only reason why I say that is because it was on that, because those meetings were on that schedule when we.
I agree with you about canceling. I have no opinion about combining or not, but I agree with you about the date.
No, I think we all agree on that. I think one thing we learned is that whenever we try to change a meeting date,
it always causes
confused.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, I think.
Hey, Mike's up.
Mike.
Yeah, I don't remember when we combined it, but we do have a separate ADA meeting with paratransit every other month, the day before our board meeting. We meet here with Mike, me, the paratransit staff. I'm not sure why there's a separation there. We meet specifically with just the ADA community.
I don't see it. I mean, I think the two could be combined too, but
we're working
But
on.
we have a separate meeting already.
Yeah, we're working on a master calendar for the entire agency with all departments, all issues of the meetings, and so we'll be happy to share that, like at committee meetings, so that all of the members can see kind of a list of meetings so far for 2019.
And Mike, the ADA meeting is listed separate from paratransit. but I don't have an issue with them being combined.
Yeah, but we have a separate daytime meeting with
I-
them too, I mean.
I can't answer that question. I take accept whatever calendar they give me. I just try to follow the rules, because I don't want to get to.
I don't know why that's a separate
I mean,
one.
I
We're
don't
doing
have
it
a
at
strong
public.
feeling one way or the other, that's.
Yeah, we talked about, Curtis and I and several of the other members of the leadership team, we talked about coming up with a system-wide department calendar, you know, because we're going to be having more community public meetings regarding the Let's Go initiative, and then he wants Mike to still have meetings regarding service development and paratransit, and then Terry's budget meetings are coming up. So we're working on a comprehensive master schedule of all those meetings, and we'll be happy to share those with you at committees.
And then to answer your question, Dr. O, that the focus group was set up as ADA, not just for paratransit, it was for fixed or paratransit, because we had some ADA passengers that ride fixed predominantly that wanted to be a part of, talking about some of the issues with fixed route. So that's initially why that focus group was set up.
Then why do we have more than one? There's the point again, we meet for that, and then they also come to the public meeting, and I don't know why there's more than one, to be honest with you.
Agreed.
But the meeting I'm talking about is on the calendar, so that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, Chester.
What I'm hearing is one of the reasons why we shouldn't be changing and combining. Because those folks who show up at the paratransit meeting want to talk about the paratransit problems. Those folks who show up at the fixed route problem want to talk about the fixed route. Those folks who show up at ADA want to talk about the problems that ADA had. Now, one of the things that I hope we never lose sight of on this board and in this organization is that we're a service organization. Because we're a service organization, we have to make ourselves available to those folks, all right, who we serve. So you combine the meeting and then the majority of the meeting is taken up, 99 to 2/3% of the meeting is taken up on paratransit, then fixed riders come out and call and say, well, I didn't get a chance because they were talking about this and that had nothing to do with me. That's one of the reasons why we shouldn't. Then we shouldn't cancel stuff if it's not supposed to come before this board, all right? Plus, the biggest complaint I got was that we had a public meeting and the CEO didn't show up. And the business community called me. It wasn't no riders called me. It was the business people who sent me the email saying, how is it that the CEO doesn't show up to talk about these things that concern the business community? Listen, folks, we gotta clean up stuff we're doing because we're on a bad page. We're on a bad page. You're getting bad information out. You're getting a bad perception out. And honestly, when it comes down, I've had at least 30 conversations in the business community about cutting back on the millage. I'm telling you what people are lobbying the commissioners on. With the quality of service that we are providing with CAT, y'all don't need to be this high. Y'all can back up because y'all ain't doing nothing anyway. I'm just letting you know where it is. And that's coming from the business community more than from the public. We have to solve these problems of getting folks from point A to point B. That's the only reason we in business. That's the only reason we got federal dollars. That's the only reason we got state dollars. That's the only reason we got county dollars. Is to serve the people who need the service. The city wouldn't pay for the shuttle to run around here if they didn't have people who need it. Am I right?
Well, if we didn't have people riding it.
There you go. So you have to provide that service. You have to make sure that service is on quality. So I can understand you fussing when it's not like it's supposed to be, when it's supposed to be every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes, and it's showing up every 30 or 35, then that's a legitimate argument. Just like
Chester,
these
you're
other
running
arguments
over.
I'm saying.
Can you wrap it up?
I said what I had to say.
Okay, Clinton.
Just because I had to make a quick phone call. So could the public meetings that we do have, because I've been to a couple of them, and I just want to make sure that I've got a fair understanding of which public meetings there are and when they are, because I do think that possibly restructuring or possibly recombining some of them may not be a bad idea if we don't think that those meetings are working out. I understand there's a paratransit meeting, and I understand that there's a public meeting. That was honestly one of the first meetings I ever came to at CAT, like years ago. What are the other ones? Or am I missing some?
That's a good point. Good question.
Let us get that list for you.
Okay.
And we'll make sure that every committee has it, so we can discuss it at the next committee meeting.
Okay, I think that's
everybody
great.
can weigh in before it's finalized. Because we're in a new year, and so we need to kind of have a comprehensive list of those meetings for 2019, so that all of you all will be aware of what
Perfect.
meetings are what.
Thank you, Patricia. I think also on that there were some people want to make their opinions heard to us, and I think the more availability we have for that and do it so in a structured way, so we can have a transit conversation or a fixed track conversation.
I've been to all of them.
Would be good.
Okay, let's move on to system development if we
No,
could.
because I asked them.
Okay. Well, in your board report, we have a comprehensive report for you all, but I want to say that our kickoff events for the Let's Go Designing Better Transit together were a huge success, thanks to our talented staff and the wonderful contractors that we have hired for this project. I'm extremely impressed with the Jarrett Walker and Associates contractors. As you all are aware, we created the Let's Go project website that was launched on January 11th. Shalonda, and our marketing and business development manager, took the lead on that, worked with the contractor, and got that site up by January 11th. In addition to that, we also launched the Choices report on that website. And we have our first project survey out there. That project survey is still open until February 10th. And I'm happy to report that so far, 200 people in our community have participated in that survey. So we passed the 200 mark. This morning we had 201. We'd like to have 400 or 500 surveys completed. And so please encourage your colleagues, your neighbors, your friends to go to the website and participate in that survey. Denise, one of our subcontractors on the project, also delivered more of these cards. Many of you saw these cards at the events that you attended, and I appreciate those of you who are serving on our steering advisory committee and attending that meeting at Savannah Tech earlier this month. And then right after that, we scheduled a meeting on the 15th, a public meeting, a community open house at Coastal Georgia Center. And you might recall I mentioned to you that if we had 20 people that show up, we would consider that a success, because really public meetings, community public meetings, are going by the wayside. People are extremely busy and they want to engage with organizations through other means. But at that community open house, we had over 45 members who attended. Many of our board members attended, and I appreciate those of you who came out for that meeting. We also had some former CAT board members who attended the meeting. And we got additional press coverage at that meeting, which was surprising to me, just because earlier that day, Grant Sparks, our planning director, and our contractor participated in a media briefing, so that they basically extended invitations to local press and invited them to come in and talk about the project. So for that media briefing earlier in the day, we had all of the television stations, just about, they came by and interviewed Grant and Michelle. And then, like I said, surprisingly, they also showed up for the community open house that night. And so we got additional press coverage. So I was very, very pleased with the press coverage and the work of our team in the system development department. talented group of people that made this initial launch a success. We still have much more to do, and so I encourage you, if you need extra cards, Valerie has a stack of these so that you can help us spread the word in the community about the project. We also have notices on our bus, and I want us to thank our maintenance director for assisting us in getting those flyers on the bus, on our buses and the fleet, to remind customers about that as well. And the latest information about the project is we also scheduled a webinar on January 23rd for people who couldn't make the community meeting. And so that webinar took place last week, and Shalonda has now embedded that webinar on the Let's Go website, so that information is available as well. As I mentioned, the steering committee went well. We had, let's see, I believe the number was something like 45 or 46 of the individuals who showed up. Commissioner Ellis, thank you for making those calls to Savannah State. As a result of that, we had representatives, had 3 representatives from Savannah State attending the meeting. But thank you all very, very much for assisting us. Mr. French, thank you for doing media interviews at the community open house that night. He did a fantastic job.
Grant was much better.
He showed you a good time.
Grant's much
They
better.
didn't show Howard's interview.
Oh, wow.
And thank you all for spreading the word. Thank you for the wonderful op-ed that you submitted. That was awesome. And Bill, thank you for all of the social media posts that you did on the project as well. Thank you all for helping us.
If I can jump in before Clinton, because I can't seem to do this.
Go for it, take it.
I would just like to say, Patricia, the people that were there at the public meeting for the launch were actually fairly excited. So I was encouraged by the fact that the community is embracing this project, even at this stage.
Yes, I was too. Thank you.
Clinton,
I
don't have the option to speak.
Oh, well, Shalon, I was really impressed with the website. I thought that was super great. It was very easy to use, and I thought it was very much sort of Web 2.0, Web 3.0. Kat's main website, maybe not so much Web 2.0, Web 3.0, but it looked really great. And Choices report I thought was fascinating. Y'all got to read it. That's all I got to say. Also, kudos for keeping up with the bilingual aspect of this whole initiative. I think that's really important. I was talking to the chairman of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and he was really pleased that we were keeping up on that. And I was going to ask about marketing on the bus for the Let's Go initiative, but it sounds like we've got that covered, so I think that's really great. And I've just been impressed with this whole initiative so far, and looking forward to seeing it through.
Thank you.
Bill?
Yeah, I think Jay and Clinton will agree with me about the workshop, the day-long workshop we did. I thought that went really well. It was great exercises. Michelle presented the information really well, but I think the most important thing that came out of it, in my mind, was we had a good cross-section of the community participating. And I think most of them walked out of there with a much better idea about how difficult this is after going through those exercises. So I think that was really terrific, and creating some voices down the road when everybody starts niggling us about the different route designs that we start presenting. There'll be people there that start explaining, help explain why, if you want this, you got to give this up, and making those choices. So I thought the workshop was terrific. And I don't know if there's a plan to do anything more with that as we go forward, but I thought it went well.
Yes. Thank you for that comment.
Jay?
I only had one bad thing said to me about it, and outside of that, I feel that everybody came to me, and I'm not going to echo what the bad thing is. I'll just talk in public, private to everybody. But as far as the output, people really got to see how our transit system is in Chatham County because of the 15 to 30 minute duration times and stuff like that. People wanted more frequency as far as routes, but then they got to see that The reason why we can't always do frequency is because funding or whatever other elements out there that are preventing us. And so it gave community leaders the opportunity to see the challenges that we see as far as CAT is concerned. So I applaud you. I know I probably was a little harder in December about this whole piece right here, but I was really thoroughly impressed with the amount of people and the number of people and the quality of people that was in attendance at that meeting. And I think that we can move forward with those individuals and that output and make sure we make this thing even bigger than what it is. The other piece was a lot of people did come to me and say, hey, can we get this in the community as far as the two different exercises we performed? Can we get those in the community? Because it'll let the community know that, hey, we do have challenges that we have to face. And I'm sure that wax is not that expensive to get from the store, and I'm sure we can get those maps, because I enjoyed myself, and me and Bill had engaging conversations. I peeped over Clint's shoulder and said, hey, y'all, that's not gonna work, Clint, because you got too many fast routes. So it was enjoyable and it was fun, and I think that's what we need to bring here, because that'll loosen some of the tension we have here at the board meeting. And I just want to leave it at a point. Thank you again for that presentation.
That was cool.
And Patricia, also on your presentation, very deeper into it, you had a lot of information on employer passes.
That's correct.
Which was I enjoyed reading that to see that we are making progress with that. So I enjoyed that part of it. And keep that up.
I believe Mr. Duritz requested that.
But it is going down.
Yes.
What's that doing?
The number of passes we're selling is going down.
I mean, we'd still like to, have a discussion, a more in-depth discussion with you all at a committee meeting, about possibly, looking at the program, revamping it. But we have, recently had some accomplishments with it. The fact that we, Shalonda reached out to Georgia Southern and Savannah Tech, and they are willing to kind of pilot with us, kind of on an initiative.
Well, and there were a couple of the agencies here that were bulk buyers that had huge drops, and I wondered if that maybe they just had no need anymore, or if there was some explanation. How much
Yeah, it kind of varies from month to month.
Like distance charities, maybe they don't need it anymore. Maybe that's part of the reason for it.
Yeah, the information is not consistent every month. It depends on what their needs are. But those are two options that we do.
Thank you for digging into this deeper, because it's something I think is a real opportunity for us.
Just to kind of echo that real quick, at least personally, I've sort of accepted the fact that we're going to continue seeing lower and lower and lower ridership, because we're really probably not going to be making any large changes until it's redesigned. And so I've talked to a number of different folks, and kind of my message to them is that in the next 18, 24 months, we'll be having mobile ticketing, a whole new transit app, and a whole new redesign. It's kind of just like this is a pretty big promise, I think, to the community of what we're going to be able to, the level of service, the product that we'll be able to provide will be superior to what we have right now. But since we can't make any of those changes now, we're just going to kind of see it continue doing what it's going to do. And I think that's just like, I'm nothing we can really change about it right now. It's just too big of a shift. But we do have plans to move it around, which is exciting. So I think you'll see that with hotels across the whole board. I'm done.
Okay, then why don't we move on to finance? Terry.
Last board agenda item. So the financial report for month to date and year to date through December is in your package. To follow up on a question asked last month, the stable and lower fuel prices are making a difference. We've flipped over in the fixed drop category, and I feel like if everything remains stable, we'll hit that budget target after all, so that's good news. We talked last month about the line of credit being paid down and the note being paid. So all of those things are good, and I will answer any questions anyone may have about the update.
Okay, you've got one with Chester.
Where are we as far as the government back open now? So are we expecting those? Have we received those funds, or where are we?
So the ecosystem, which is the computer software system that allows us to draw the grant funds, was open yesterday, but the shutdown caused the necessary password reset, and the help desk was not functioning yesterday. So while we've been meeting, finance staff should have gotten their password reset and been able to draw December's operating assistance. So we're current with eligible draws, and as long as the government remains open, we should expect a notice of funding on our current year grants soon, hopefully within the next 30 days.
So are we covered for the 30 days?
Yes, sir. So basically what happens every January into February is FTA announces their annual apportionments, our annual program funds. And they have not announced that yet. Once they announce it, we're able to apply, and 3 to 4 months later, we get that grant awarded. So as long as they stay open, we should just be facing a 4-week delay on this year's grant process.
Well, the only thing I'm concerned, I know all of that information, but the only thing I'm concerned about is that operating capital is in place that we can pay folk, pay our vendors, pay our employees, and not have to wait 30 days out.
Yes, sir.
Or not have to wait 45 days out. If we have enough funding in place to cover that, and then I can understand even if we go into the reserves we have to pay that off, and then once the government does what it does and put everything back in place, then we can put it back in place. If we need to do that, then let's do that. But I just want to make sure we're covered.
Yes, sir.
So you're telling me yes, okay. I'm great, I'm good.
Jay?
I don't think we pointed this out large enough, and I think we should have talked about it here at this table. But we ought to, but as far as what I'm looking at on the screen, as far as our note is concerned, it says $0, 12/31/2018. Am I correct as far as the carryover, the thing we pay $1 million or 1.5 million?
So it started out as $7 million back in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
It's been reduced $1 million a year on time by CAP. We've made every payment, and the last payment was made a month early in December for that long-term portion of the note. It's gone, zero.
So what I'm in I'm celebrating right now.
Yes, I'm celebrating too.
Because we all frowning face right here, but we don't have any debt as far as that's concerned.
Right, so
I think we ought to be happy about it.
Yes, basically what that means is in 2013 we operated at a level that generated $6 million more in cost than we could pay for it. So on top of each year's annual operating cost, we've been covering an additional $1 million. And we finally paid it off, and that long-term note is no more.
So as long as we don't take any long-term notes out, next year December we ain't got to pay that $1 million out.
Nope.
Okay, I don't know why we're not happy about this.
I don't either.
We're ecstatic about that.
Right.
And
so we have a $3.5 million operating deficit that we use our 5307 to fill. That capital grant money. If we can find a way to keep our funding current and move some of that to bus purchases, we'll be served better in the long term. Nothing we have to decide today as an organization or input from the board, but that $3.5 million that comes in from the feds that we use for operating, we need to try to find a way to shift that to capital uses. So we've got that annual capital influx to fund our capital replacement plan.
And and then the other piece I want to talk about is reserves. What can we do as far as working on reserves?
So we have the 835 that we planned for last year. This year our budget planned for a $250,000 reserve addition, and as long as we continue on budget, we should be able to place additional funds in reserve. So that would get us right at 1.1, which is.
And that 800 represents what percentage, I guess, as far as reserves?
It's 2 weeks worth of operating costs.
Okay, so where do we want to be at as far as reserves?
The county is comfortable with 3 months. So 3 months for us would be $4.8 million, and we have 800,000.
So we understand that that's what we're trying to get toward.
That type of reserve would surely allow us to weather government shutdowns that extend 6 to 9 months.
Okay. So I just wanna make sure I stress that, cause it's stuff in here, but it's not in the minutes, so I just wanna make sure we stress the fact that.
Yep.
We-
So
we
all
are-
of,
we are-
all of
we
the
are
work,
$0 in.
yes, all of the work that this board did and staff did when we designed a budget to start this reserve and get this debt paid has put us at a financial position that's gonna allow us to weather this shutdown.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it, Terry.
Who do you contact on the federal situation to see about them working to make sure we get the money?
So our representative
Yeah.
is FTA Region 4, and unfortunately, they were not staffing during the shutdown. But we have been in contact with them as of yesterday, and we're gonna get the money that we couldn't get in December. It amounts to about $480,000.
All right, now, Pete, hit that button so we can keep in line now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Pete can't hit that button.
I know.
Leave it alone.
I just want to say in
that
line with,
Are they the ones that you contact always when it's not being distributed?
So we have access to our federal funds through a computer system. So there's really no person to contact. When the government shut down, they turned the computer system off. And now that they're back at work, they've turned it back on. But Region 4 is back to work as far as I know, and we should be able to contact them if we have any issues.
Okay, now, you say you work with the computer on it, but sometimes the computer might put out that you're gonna get the money in 2 months or 4 months or something like that. And we need the money before then, if it's possible at all. Is there some person that, one of our elected officials that can help us with that?
So the computer system we're talking about as far as getting the actual cash is for after a grant has been awarded. And when we request it, we receive the cash within 24 hours. So I think the assistance and support you're speaking of would come before the grant was awarded. So we would have opportunities in the next year's competitive rounds to enlist that type of support for CAP.
in keeping with Jay's celebratory comments, in addition to being debt-free, long-term debt-free, you mentioned that we'd like to have $4 million to cover in the reserve, but we only have $800,000 now.
Yep.
To keep that in perspective, last year we didn't have any.
Zero. So
Oh, yeah.
We're in a lot better shape than we were.
we have a lot to celebrate. Had the government shutdown occurred last December,
We
we would be having a different conversation because the 18-month cycle had not rolled. We were still behind in our payables, and the money that came in December had to be used for vendors, debt payment, line of credit, and wages. And this year, there was, by plan, funds left over in December to carry us through January, February, and March.
In keeping with Chester's concern about making sure we pay our bills on time and all right now, we've got $1.5 million line of credit that we could tap if we needed to.
Yeah, we should not need it unless the government does something.
Drastic.
Yeah.
But we do have that available.
Yes.
And we haven't used any of
No,
that.
we probably won't need to use it until April. And last year, we needed to use it immediately to cover our January operating costs after we made the note payment. So it's in the financials, but it's not clearly evident in our conversations how much improved our financial stability is.
And I will add one comment to that. I guess I'm the longest serving board member now, except for Pete. And our financial health since I came on the board is like night and day. When I first came on the board, not only did we not have any money, we owed people hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. When we had just that small shutdown that happened in 2 or 3 years ago,
October of 14, I think.
we were within
13.
days of not making payroll. So the progress we've made on the financial front has been really phenomenal.
I have a question, and this maybe would be directed toward Mr. Backwell, or perhaps you, Terry. Is the next crisis flashpoint for a possible shutdown February the 15th?
Right, right.
Mhm.
If they shut down again,
That's what
it
I
will
was asking.
further delay any grant processing that would allow us access to this year's operating assistance. But we have planned to be without that January through April because it's a normal annual cycle. So when we talked in committee about being concerned if the government stayed shut down through May or June, that would further delay our access to this year's grants and cause an unknown time frame for August, September, and October. So if they stay open and they issue that notice of funding, that's the last piece to keep us on track.
That was my comment. Let's get the money before they shut down again.
They have to, yeah, they have to
Everybody-
offer it
everybody's
first.
trying to do that right now.
There's one other thing, and I'm not sure this is anything anybody here can answer, but I did read that there was an expectation because of the situation with Venezuela that there could be a big spike in fuel costs.
Correct.
So we might go back the other way. Right now, we're right at $500,000 better than budget. So we've got a little cushion overall, but we would hate something that's stabilized to spike back up.
And we're all
and eat it.
celebrating here in Ty's.
I know, he's bringing us down. He's bringing us down.
Other foreign
It's all
countries
being
and gas.
a realistic devil's advocate.
Ty, you and
Yeah.
I on the same boat. Be ready before it get here.
We get a fuel bill every 2 weeks, and we shop the market every time we order, so we'll see it and report back if it starts spiking up.
I wasn't trying to cast a downer on all the celebration. I mean, there are things.
See, now I know why nobody was smiling.
We all know
It's a
that.
lawyer. It's always the lawyer.
We only got 3 weeks to do that this year.
Okay, we're running out of meeting time, so moving on. I don't believe we have any old business. We have nothing listed.
Last month I requested the RFPs, for 2018.
And that's with Curtis, so we're gonna have to postpone that till next month, Jay.
You said old business, I'm bringing it up.
I also want to, under old business, I also want to, from here on in, make sure we get the old business itemized.
I agree with
From
you.
reading through
Yeah.
the Robert's Rules of Orders, we have to itemize under old business what we want to discuss.
Technically, old
Technically, so
business.
next week moving forward, next month rather, we want to do a little better job on
Under Robert's Rules of Parliamentary Procedure, old business really means unfinished business. It has to right, it has to be, there has to be a pending motion or resolution that either was tabled or was not concluded at the previous meeting.
Some carried
So-
over.
So where do requests go at? Because I requested RFPs, where would that go at?
He said you
Under
got
old
table,
bu-
it go under old table.
I'm asking just for
Well,
clarification. He
it's-
said that statement, so I'm asking.
Well, that probably would come under new business. It would
Even
have
if
been
it was
new-
last month?
Last month, it would have been new business, right?
Correct, but where would it fill in this month? That's my question.
Well, without a pending motion or resolution, was either tabled or was not concluded in the previous meeting, there is no old business. The only old business under Robert's Rules is a pending motion or resolution that was not concluded.
I didn't understand that, but we don't have to look
Listen.
at the order either.
Stop
And-
wasting time.
No.
Listen to me
No,
good.
listen.
Offer a motion that we table the RFPs until Curtis get here.
All right, I second.
No, done. Let's stop wasting time.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Any new
Is
business?
that acceptable? Ty, is that acceptable?
Yes.
I just want to make sure.
You gotta carry it now, that's all.
He got to carry it.
All right, we need a first and a second. Let's vote on
Got
it.
it.
What are we voting on?
To table the,
RFP request
request,
from
open
Jay
RFPs.
until Curtis can get them here.
That should be Jay's motion. Who'd move it?
I move that we table the discussion on RFPs until next week.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do we have any new business?
I apologize, Chester.
New business?
You got new business?
I would like to, if we can't do it today, I would like to have an executive session at next month's meeting, and I'll discuss that with the chair, after the meeting, I guess. Because it wasn't an opportunity, I mean, I get these things, and I was in Atlanta when I got this agenda on Friday, and so I didn't look at this thing until this morning. And so I want to do an executive session, but I know it's late notice. I could move and second for executive session today, I know I could do that, but I wanna give you the latitude to, we can take.
That's fine, but
Let's go
we
for it.
have to announce in advance what the subject matter of the executive session is.
I
One of
understand
one of the exemptions.
So
I
we'll
understand.
put it on next month?
Yeah, that's fine.
We have to know the
Okay.
topic.
No, I'm just
You have to
noting
give
it.
the,
Yeah,
the
we
notice
have to,
on it.
he'll get that to us, we'll put it on. Okay, then we need a motion and a second to adjourn.
So
One
moved.
quick thing. One quick thing. What am I talking about? I'm doing a new project called Ride-Alongs with Clinton. Everybody's invited. Premise is simple. You come and ride the bus, and we explore different routes and sort of figure out. You talk to riders and look at the ground around us and look at the route and where it's going. The next one will be Saturday at 2 o'clock. Everybody's welcome to come. We're very excited.
We all been riding along, but we're glad you're doing that,
Just
brother.
got here.
Sounds like
We
you're
all
just-
been riding along, but we're glad the new
You
member
know-
of the
you do
board
know that's what
is
we're
starting to
doing.
get his ride along going. Thank you,
So
brother.
we still have to, all those in favor of adjournment?
All right, everybody.
You can tell by the people standing up.